everybody. I am here in Houston, Texas, and working on some content and really just talking about more of our stories. I want you to make sure that you keep your eyes open for this video I'm doing on Sugar Land 95, in addition to what I'm doing here this time. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this toxic relationship between the Democratic Party and Black America. And now, how does this pertain to or tie into everything that's going on with the broader African diaspora? It's because you see the same system around as far as the different political parties in different African countries. It really mirrors what's going on in America. So I'm gonna show you a couple of clips, and I want you to take a look at these clips because really there's a solution to the problem. And I think that when, and this is my opinion, that when Black Americans stop being codependent upon the Democratic Party, they might find some success. Now, some of you may say, well, who do we go to? We can't go to the Republican. Nah, we know better. But there is a solution, and it's going to take generations of mindset shift in order for it to happen, but it definitely can happen. Take a look at this.
Keeping voters fired up is not easy while trying to keep yourself warm. It's a cold, rainy day in Milwaukee. Volunteers are knocking on doors, talking to potential voters. They're with the faith-based group Power to the Polls. It's one of many efforts Black churches are making to keep people engaged for the midterms. And it seems they have their work cut out for them.
They really just don't trust a system that has disregarded what they feel for centuries.
The Reverend Greg Lewis is executive director of Power to the Polls. He's also assistant pastor at Milwaukee's St. Gabriel's Church of God in Christ. Reverend Lewis says Black voters in town can be highly disconnected, even in the recent mayoral election with a Black candidate on the ballot.
They asked 25,000 people, do you know there's a mayoral election in your city on April 5th? And 92% didn't know.
92%?
Yes.
That has to be really disheartening for you.
It is.
Particularly as somebody who is in the streets trying to get them to pay attention.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you, we have a Black county executive in office. We have a Black mayor. We have a Black treasurer. We have a Black city attorney. Most of our common council is Black. The opportunity to really grow and develop is here. You know, disheartening is not the word, it's heartbreaking.
Different Black ministers are responding differently to this heartbreak. But all the preachers we spoke to said they're acting out of what they believe the Bible would have them do.
If you read the Bible, there's politics in the Bible.
The Reverend Al Sharpton leads the National Action Network, a social justice ministry connecting people of faith to activism.
David was king. That's a political office. Joseph was governor. That's a political office. So where do we get this thing that you cannot be in the spirit of God and in politics?
In Brooklyn, New York, Bishop Leah Daughtry stays active with the Democratic Party nationally. She ran two of its recent conventions, Denver and Philadelphia. The bishop leads the House of the Lord churches, a Pentecostal network of churches with an Afrocentric focus. She says the party can supplement her religious advocacy, but not replace it.
The Democratic Party is a tool. It's a means toward an end. It is not church. It's not designed to be church. They've got their objectives, and I have mine as a faith leader. Sometimes they intersect. Sometimes we're striving for the same things. Sometimes we're not. And so when I size it up, I say the Democratic Party better reflects, not perfectly, but better reflects my values as a Christian than the other party does.
The ministers we spoke to all said their allegiance is to God first. Whoever's politics align with their theology gets their support. And today, those politicians are mostly Democrats. But alignment is not enough. Actions speak much louder, or inactions.
Where do you think the Democratic Party is failing its constituents right now? Any places in particular where you think it's really falling short?
Rural Black folk very rarely hear from the Democratic Party. I think there are forgotten places where I wish we could do more to address poverty, to address systemic exclusion.
The Reverend William Barber II is co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. He says the church must speak to how political decisions affect the poor, just as Jesus did.
Whether you're Republican or Democrat, you stand against people having health care. That is a form of injustice and sin. If you are in fact Republican or Democrat and you block living wages while you allow the wealthy to have pornographic sums of money and continue to prosper in their wealth while other folk flounder in their poverty, that is in fact sinful. And the role of the church is not to be Democrat or Republican, but to be prophetic.
Reverend Barber says President Biden should persevere on issues of poverty and basic human needs. There are many ways to do that, including through big business. Since 2012, the Barclays Center has been the home of the Brooklyn Nets. That arena serves more than NBA fans. It also serves the community thanks to a unique partnership. The Reverend Herbert Daughtry helped organize that partnership. His activism began back in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. He is also Bishop Leah Daughtry's father. Reverend Daughtry says his neighborhood alliance, just a few blocks from the arena, secured community benefits from the Barclays Center. They range from dedicated upper bowl seats for local groups to support for a community health center. There's a level of sophistication to that I don't think Black folks are ever associated with,
Right.
especially with something that is both business related and political.
Right.
Are maybe the political aspirations in terms of how the Democratic Party and Black churches interface, are they too small? Are they thinking too small?
I don't think so. I took the position you do not absolutize your strategy on your way to liberation. You have to use this, you have to use that.
The Barclays Center deal speaks to something all the preachers we spoke to brought up. In their views, people need to see the concrete results of political decisions, things they can point to that motivate them to vote. Reverend Daughtry says the people he talks to are also motivated by something else, their fear over today's increasingly extreme politics.
I think there is a deep, deep feeling among white Americans that they have taken our country and we have nothing to lose. And therefore, whatever we do is going to be all right. I think we saw January the 6th in Washington, some of this sentiment, some of this feeling that they feel they have nothing to lose. I'm not sure how many white politicians grasp the danger that is out there.
Those concerns may speak to a larger issue that came up in all our conversations, the feeling of being taken for granted. But when churches mobilize, they can reshape elections. But it's not easy to get voters fired up, especially without a big race on the ballot. Reverend Lewis says his own fire goes out often.
Yeah, I quit every day, man. And like you like you understand, how frustrating it can be. You can't even imagine because, you said something, man, I'm not responsible for you. But see, that's why it hurts me so much because I know that
You feel that responsibility. What is that responsibility? Can you elaborate on that?
See, I know these people, and that's why I don't give up, because I can see it. I know one of these days, wow, things are going to be different. I know it. So if I stop now, the blessing God has for us, for me, will be lost. So I can't stop.
Black churches are chasing that blessing as they see it in many ways. So how should Democrats who want their votes chase after them? Reverend Al Sharpton says all politicians need to be real with Black voters and say what they really believe, not just what they think voters want to hear.
One of the reasons I had a great working relationship with Barack Obama is from day one. He said, I'm not going to do everything you want me to do, and I'm not going to say everything you want me to say. But I agree with you on these basic things. We're going to disagree with that. And that's
why you liked him?
That's why I liked him. Because I said, I can at least trust what this guy says.
When it comes to winning elections, Bishop Leah Daughtry says Democrats need to articulate their accomplishments so voters can remember them.
Look, Joe Biden has created more jobs in his 1.5 years as president than the last 4 Republican presidents combined. How do you tell people that? People know that they're working. So how do you make that a win? How do you make the new roads and the new bridges? How do you make healthcare, all the things? How do you make cutting child poverty in half a win and let that relate to people's lives every single day so that they feel compelled to see that kind of progress continue and to do their part to make it continue?
As for what to work on next, Reverend William Barber suggests a more holistic approach. Voting rights get a lot of attention, but he says it should be part of an overarching push for social justice.
That's one thing I've learned clearly. You must have a moral fusion approach. You never just allow your position to just be just one thing, like what one thing needs to be changed. You have to show the interlocking injustices and evil require an intersectional response. And as a African-American clergy, you must build fusion alliances.
And as heartbreaking as his activism can be, Reverend Lewis says some things do keep voters plugged in.
You're not going to have elections every year. So there's something else that you need to be generating some energy about in these off election years. And that's what we've chosen, the housing.
Perhaps it's an issue at the House's Power to the Polls visits. Stephanie Johnson is the group's field coordinator. Knocking on doors can feel uncertain, even awkward, but she says it's worth it.
I invested in Milwaukee. You know, I've had some tragedies happen here, and I'm vested in making this a better city for us, you know, us of color, because we've been overlooked for too long.
The rain made for a short day of canvassing. They plan to keep at it ahead of the midterms, doing what they feel called to do. Reverend Herbert Daughtry says his 91 years on this earth have given him plenty to worry about, but not enough to dim his hope. It is one of the promises of the New Testament, a harvest at the proper time for those who do not give up.
This is our legacy. This is what has been bequeathed to us. This is what I teach my children. And as you can probably see from here, is that we are going to win. You are going to be successful. God has programmed you for success. Don't you program yourself for failure.
All right, so from that video, you see all the same players, Al Sharpton, and, all of them. And you see Al Sharpton, oh, look at this, Houston in the house. You see Al Sharpton, you see all the different characters. Here we go, walk across the street. There it is. In the city. Oh, wrong song. So you see the same players, but what I felt was the frustration of the one of the pastors. How they were talking about all of the different frustrations and him crying. And what I've realized over the years is that if you do the history on the Democratic Party and you see all the black mayors, all the black city council, all the black, but you get the same results. But the insanity is that we keep voting these particular systems in. And by, as long as we do that, the results are going to be the same. And we're not going to, and it's the same thing in different African countries as well. Same thing. You have one party, the two-party system, which was really established by the imperialists who came in and decided that they wanted to put those parties in, and they put their puppets in. It's the same system around the world. So what I realized is that when I was going around different parts of Africa, I said, well, the people have everything they need. They don't need these systems. But what the educational system, the cultural system does is and the religious system causes people to become codependent upon the system for their sustenance. I need y'all to do this for me. I need you to do that. And if you don't, then I can't survive. And I looked around Africa and I saw people in different parts of Africa, people picking up that same kind of mentality of, I need you to provide for me But then you look at the landscape and say the people have everything they need. They have land, they have water, they have food, they know how to grow it, they know how to live off of the land, but somehow, even in the midst of that, they have been convinced that they don't have what it takes in order to survive. So I thought about Black Americans, $1.6 trillion spending power. We go to these educational systems, we go to these religious systems. Our culture, by and large, of course not entirely, tells us that we don't have enough. And for many of us, we're codependent upon the government to do certain things. Now, there's a place where I believe government works well, and there's a place where I believe some of the system is working well. For those, you know, you get the trickle down from those who benefit from it the most, you know, so that, and when I say working well, meaning you get some results, largely in, and I don't even know if it's a good thing so much, but a lot of the development that you see happening in jobs, you'll see that come to certain areas. And obviously we need money in that particular system and it works well. But I'm thinking systemically over the course of my life, the way the people we have been trained is that we need to be dependent upon systems, welfare, you know, the whole thing, somebody paying our rent. And if we don't have that, then, you know, there's a problem. When in actuality, if we take, now some places don't have it, but a lot of places do. And what we do is we take our money and we send it right back out. And then sending it back out of the community, what ends up happening is that it you know, continues to allow the Black American community to be the consumption whores for those who want to invest. And so we consume, minimal investing. Some of this is changing, obviously, with a lot of the movements that are out now, like Earn Your Leisure and Wall Street Trapper and Sleep It's for Suckers and stuff, but people who are actually now putting financial literacy and investment at the forefront. Dr. Boyce, Dr. Claude, you know, so now this conversation is happening, whereas before it wasn't happening. But all of those movements talk about taking personal responsibility and not relying upon these government systems in order to do it for us. And that's where the Democratic Party has come in and really served as an enabler in many cases. Doesn't mean that the Democratic Party has not done anything good. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that for us, we have to begin to think differently. And I think Charles Barkley, the other thing I realize is that in many instances, the Democratic Party, it's like the relationship between much of Black America and the Democratic Party is like a toxic, sick relationship. And there'll be people who, you know, going to come in the comments and they're going to defend, literally defend the Democratic Party. But that's a part of, you know, that's what happens when the battered spouse has the relationship and everybody else can see that the spouse is no good and battering and all of that kind of stuff. But the person who's being battered can't see it. And they defend the the spouse or the abusing party. And that's really what happens with the Democrats. I've seen it my entire life, and I've shared this many times before. My grandfather said, the Democrats got our back and all this, that, and the other. And basically what the Democratic Party has done in many cases is just used Black people's trauma to their advantage. Used many Black people's frustrations and hopelessness, feelings of hopelessness and despair. And then it's like, well, who do we go to? I mean, like I said, I've seen it on videos. Who do we go to? Where else how do we vote? How do we do this, that, and the other? And when that's the language that people have, then we get the results that we get. And again, people don't like to hear this. Some people don't. Some people want to hear. Some people know it. Some of my elders who watch, they know. They've been watching this stuff. They've seen it even longer. They've seen it 30, 40 years longer than I've been alive. And they're like, they're tired of it too. And sometimes when you see something for so long, you become tired and frustrated and disenfranchised. And once that happens, then you just kind of throw your hands up and say, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do. So what I did when I started seeing this stuff back in 2008, 12 and all of that, I said, I can sit here and just be frustrated with the system. And I said, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take responsibility for my own household. I'm going to recognize the traps that are out here, and and me recognizing the traps that are out here for myself and for my family, that will, that will put me in a much better position. So, but for a lot of people, all I say is this: you got to stop and think about it. Same results over and over and over and over and over, cycle after cycle after cycle, and we've been bred and groomed and conditioned to take incremental steps, but everybody else comes in and stuff happens, can get grants, can get all types of things to start businesses. Even in our curriculums and education, business is not emphasized, jobs are emphasized. They created jobs. Let's talk about how many businesses were created by Black businesses or African-American, whatever you want to call it. Let's talk about that. Let's hold these Black politicians accountable. But again, that's not our culture. Our culture, much like what I see around the world, we don't want to talk about the dirty laundry. We want to make everything look good so everybody can see the best. And it's like, but that's an illusion. That's an illusion. And so when you got everybody walking around acting like everything is good, and there are systemic problems, there are educational problems, there are cultural problems, there are all these different things, but we're acting like everything is good, nothing changes. And the profiteers, I love making up words, continue to profit. And as they do that, again, here we are frustrated. I'm not frustrated. Let me tell you this, I'm not frustrated. I went down that whole thing, the dude in the video, I said, man, you know what? Here are the resources, here's the knowledge, here's the education, here's how you implement it. And after a while, if people don't do it, you gotta just let them be. But there are people out there who will do it. And there are people out there, they might be a small percentage, might be a large percentage, who knows? Sometimes you just got to put it out there that people pick for themselves. That's how the imperialist changes culture. And that's how, with this information age, people can begin to now see things differently. But it's up to individuals to do it. And until we are ready to get rid of these old systems, when somebody's like, yeah, I'm holding on to the old system and I'm going to keep doing it that way. Okay, I don't even waste my time. So anyway, I got more in this video. Take a look.
We're all part of a game that we don't even know we're in. Yeah. Because let's get one straight. The Democrats and the Republicans are both full of shit. And they said that you got to pick a team. You got to pick a team. But what does the team actually do for you? Absolutely nothing. I voted Democratic my entire life. And I'm starting to think like, man, everybody in my hometown is still poor. Yeah. Man, all the Black neighborhoods are still poor. They all go to schools, and we've been voted Democratic for 59 years. I've been on the earth. And then I was like, at least the Republicans, they just gonna take care of the rich folks. I think the point I try to tell people now, man, if you're waiting on these political parties to make your life better, you just wrong.
So what do you do though?
You got to handle your own business, Chan. You got to handle your own business. Like, you can't sit around and say, hey, I want this part of this. You have to take control of your life.
So Charles said it very eloquently, is that we have to handle our own business. And until we handle our own business, then nothing is going to change. And you go back and you look, I talk about all the years I spent in the so-called Black church. And on some level, the majority of people are trained to be codependent upon something. You can't do it, so you gotta, let something else do it for you. Where you have the ability to do it for yourself. But no, you can't do it for yourself because you gotta let something else do it for you. You're waiting on something else to do it. And in the meantime, while we're sitting around waiting on something else to do it, every other ethnic group has done whatever they want to do and left with anything, crumbs behind. So and this is what I say to people, when you learn to take responsibility and utilize what you have, if you have one piece of land and you go in and you cultivate the land and you multiply it. I'll give you a good example since I'm on this tip. If you have a plot of land and you have the ability to grow on that land, to get water out of that land, to provide shelter on that land, and this could be your apartment in the city, this could be whatever it is. This could be your job, or you're not making the most like everybody else, but you manage your resources well. Just by the nature of proper resource management, it's going to at least sustain itself, barring some major catastrophe, a drought, or earthquake, a flood, hurricane, tornado, something like that. So now, in our culture, and remember, we're in a consumption culture, so we're trained to consume, 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 not invest, invest, invest. Some cultures invest, 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 build, build, build. So when I'm traveling around the world, it's like you see where this mindset is, even if it's not promoted, it's condoned or accepted. So when you start shifting that mindset to say, all right, I can't go and just be out here spending everything that I have, and then expecting the government to come along and fix it. If you understand the way that the government works and governments work, they are in their own best interest, and their best interests go to the level of, if it's a tax base, then standing here waiting for this. If it's a tax base, then they want to make sure that they secure that. And the way that they secure that is by, oh, cool, I can walk across. All right. The way that they secure that is to, make sure jobs are provided. And that's how you do it. You provide jobs, you get tax base and all of that. So if everybody understands the importance, or I'll just speak to the people I'm speaking to right now, Black America. If we understand the power of our resources, and we now begin to make the investments in real estate, for those who do stocks, for those who do crypto, for those who do REITs, for those who do wholesale, for those who do business to business, whatever it is. If we begin to start doing that just like everyone else, then it really ties back into being investors versus consumers. When it comes time, if it's something that we don't like politically, then we don't have to vote those same people in. We just withhold our money. If it's something that's going on as an injustice at a particular company, all right, I'm not taking my money there. I'm gonna find somewhere else to go. But because what the Democratic Party, in my opinion, has done, not entirely, but culturally, has these types of conversations are not at the top of the platform. And so what they play on is color, skin color, and saying, okay, that person's Black, that person's Democrat, it must be good, but we get the same thing for the past however long. So when we take responsibility for our own education, and the first education, I believe, and this, again, my opinion, is financial education. Some people say it's religious education. If you read it closely, you could probably find one in that same, kind of hand in hand, just depending on who's doing the teaching. But when you take your own education into your own hands and understanding the system that you're in, most people don't understand the system that they're in. And that's how the Democratic Party has been able to blind for so long. It's been a situation of good cop, bad cop, me versus you, Republicans. So they've done a brilliant job of making the Republicans the bad guys. And the Republicans have done a good job of that too. So then it puts people in a position of feeling hopeless. Well, what do I do? If I'm, what do I do? Who do I vote for? Where do I vote? The first vote begins in your household with your resources. The same thing in Africa. It begins in your village, in your household, with your resources. And the less dependent you are upon government systems, the more liberated, I believe, that you will be. And being able to say, all right, I don't need to get trapped into the trappings of what society says I need to do and have. And say, okay, so how's an immigrant go into a country and turn that into coming to America and turn that into millions of dollars? What did they do? They controlled their living expenses. They came in with a different mindset. Unfortunately, a lot of them get westernized and then they become consumers. And once you become a consumer, at that point, you're losing the game, because now you consume, and before you have an opportunity to earn. Now, once you earn and you consume, then that's a totally different ballgame. But a lot of people prematurely consume, and so because of that, then they're running into that situation. I've seen it all throughout. Talk about Black culture, and I'm standing here in Houston. I'm looking at this used to be an area that was, this is an area right now that's being gentrified. And somebody's coming in with an investor mindset. While many of us are still paying rent somewhere, still trying to figure out how to, do this, that, or the other, still dealing with the bad credit, not really understanding the system we're in. You have people who come from other countries, get the resources. And I'm talking about major capital, and build these buildings that we then go rent from. But yet we have been born, raised in this land, but somehow that's our story. Election cycle after election cycle. So I say all of this to say that once we begin to take responsibility for our own matters and our own affairs, our own bank accounts, and stop relying upon the Democratic Party to come save us and waiting on the next Martin Luther King to come, waiting on the next Barack Obama to come, waiting on the next person to come, and understanding how these systems work, then that's when the needle moves. Because guess what? People come into this country with no political party and make all types of advances. And again, it's not saying that we don't have advancements. It's not saying that we aren't doing anything. But as far as ownership is concerned, and as far as, all you need is a few to be able to control a whole city, especially when the resources are controlled by the hands of a few. But when you begin to start, buying a house here, not selling grandmama a house that she has in DC that's worth $2.5 million. And although you might not want anything to do with it, but you can hire a property management company and let the property management company do everything and pay them 10% each month. And now that house can yield $6,000, $7,000 a month in rent. Pay them $600, $700. You walking away with $5,000, $6,000 a month in recurring income that you'll need later in your retirement years. But so many of us sell, and we sell cheap. We would sell that same house for $750,000, not flip it and invest it into something else. We go spend it, consume, because that's our culture, and then we cry broke years later. And then we upset with the Democrats and the Republicans, and we still talking about the Democrats and the Republicans, and this is what's going on. And that's one of the reasons why that pastor's frustrated, because so many, I'm sure he's dealt with so much over the time and seen so much. And so what I say is, for those of us who are really serious, our conversation in this codependency upon education, these churches, these political parties, that remnant of people will be the people who escape this cycle that will continue to be spoken for generations. I just hope our children don't keep this up. And I hope that as it goes throughout the world, that people in different countries will recognize exactly what's going on. One thing I hear in African countries is where they're like, well, our corrupt government, there are no opportunities, our corrupt government. And all I go back to say is this: all of that may be true, but the corrupt government has a master over it. And 9 times out of 10, that is going to be the colonial master. And when you start focusing some attention on that, instead of running to cling to the colonial master, that's another way of taking advantage of it. Or what you do, what my observation is, okay, if you go to that colonial master, use the colonial master for what it's worth, and then bring the resources back. And I understand every African country has a different culture dynamic and different situations and different scenarios and different ethnic conflicts and all of that. Just like in Black America, you have different ethnic conflicts and challenges and persuasions, political persuasions and cultural persuasions and all that kind of stuff going on. But if each person takes care of their own business and their own affairs, you will find where this stuff does not run rampant and within you, in your household, in your family system. It's tough to break through because it's cultural, it's been around for a long time. But for those who do it, there's a lot of liberation on the other side of managing your personal resources, your personal affairs, and keeping your eye on the pulse of what's going on politically, staying engaged politically, speaking politically, and really calling stuff for what it is and holding people accountable. Say, we have all these Black people in position, but yet our situation, the same cycle still happens. You know, Mr. or Ms. Mayor, how is it that gentrification continues to come to our cities and we're not given those contracts? Certain people are given contracts and we're not given the contracts, and we bid for them. We do this, but we just say, okay, well, we just still gonna vote for that person in office and just watch the buildings go up that are designed to price people out. That's how this game is played. We price people out. You make sure they can't get in. And you see the whole complexion of a neighborhood change based upon economics. So when we are able to level the economic playing field, then you know we got more to talk about. But just whining and complaining and hoping they change it and all that, Lord, y'all, please give me something. They don't care about that. That's not how this world works. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it, and being wise managers of your resources, and that's what we hope to continue to inspire across the globe, and as you hear me talking about bridging the gap. So that's the deal. All right, talk to you soon.